Welcome to Talking Giants Player Profiles and Projections. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick, and it is the final player profile and projection of the 2023 season. And you know what that means? For the fifth year in a row, actually fourth year in a row, we did Eli, the last one in 2019. For the fourth year in a row, Daniel Jones, Daniel Steven Jones, the 6'5", 220, 26-year-old franchise quarterback, was drafted 6th overall and got a 4-year, $160 million contract from a regime that didn't draft him. Justin, this fact is kind of insane, and I think it speaks to resilience and why I loved him out of the draft and watching those Duke games. It made me like him so much. And early on in his career, after he would take hit after hit from his blind side, he's the first ever quarterback to have his 5th-year option declined and re-sign with the team that drafted him. The first ever. He's resilient, man. Like all the crap that he's been through, he's come out of this on top. And there's still work to be done, and there's still more games to be won. But, man, like you got to be happy for Daniel Jones to come out of this on top, where he was truly left for dead last year with a regime that declined his option, which was a death sentence every other time before that, and rolled out David Sills, Kenny Gauld, and Richie James as their starting receivers week 1.
And there were people even inside the building, Bobby, that we talked to that were pretty certain at the start of the season
It's done.
That he's not coming back.
Done.
Yeah. So credit to him, and the main barometer. And I was even listening, it's funny, I was listening back to Bleeding Blue from 2019, and David Powis and I were talking about after that Washington game, after the Andrew Thomas Bowl, we were talking about like, man, the perception on Daniel Jones changes if you just win some games. And man, we finally won some games, and I feel like most importantly, you saw him in a playoff stage, and that Philadelphia Eagles game doesn't exist in my brain. No, I'm not going to talk about it. You saw him on a playoff stage, and man, he conquered the moment on the road, which was really, really awesome. And now to say I'm most excited for him, along with every other Giants fan, I'm most excited for Daniel Jones because now we've been clamoring for the coaching. He's got the coaching. He's got the schematics. Continuity with Dable and Kafka, year 2. And now we got some dudes behind him. You got Darren Waller. You got Paris Campbell. You got Darius Slayton back. You got Isaiah Hodgins back. You got more guys that I'm not naming. Jalen Hyatt. You got the dudes behind him and the horses, the Haas's, the Jimmies and the Joes that we've also been waiting for Daniel Jones to have for the last couple years now.
And last year on this player profile, the theme of it was like, is this the last player profile of Daniel Jones? And we were kind of like, yeah, this is it. Like you said, we had heard from people in the building. The camp went really bad. And in reality, at this time last year, you looked at this roster and said they're not going to win games. But we were talking about what does Daniel Jones have to do to come back? Because me and you, for large part, like Daniel Jones, even last year, we have talked about how, like, we'll go through, like, watch his film. It's not bad. There's some bad games in there the last couple of years, like the Bucks game and the Rams game. But overall, his film's pretty damn solid. He's at least a solid quarterback in the NFL. But with the new regime, we're like, it's probably done though. And we came to the conclusion. We finally just said it. Is that what does he need to do to be back? And we're talking about be top 10 statistically, and we're just like, you know what? In reality, as meatheadish as it is, he has to win games. He has to put them in a spot where they aren't drafting a quarterback. He has to put them in a spot where they feel the need to re-sign him. And that's exactly what happened, Justin. They went out. They went to the playoffs. He had an amazing first playoff game. He did have a really bad second playoff game versus
Doesn't
Eagles.
exist.
He didn't show up very well for that game. But he earned himself coming back, even though the contract did set a new precedent for
QBs in his tier.
Quarterbacks in his tier by about 1% or so. But last year, Justin, in 2022, he completed 67.2% of his passes, 3,200 yards, which was 200 yards per game, which, shockingly enough, was a career low for him in yards per game. With Jason Garrett, he had 220 and 210 the years before. And then with Pat Shurmur, he had 250 yards per game.
When you lose games, you're throwing in the fourth quarter.
And
they were behind too, but they ran the ball a lot in the second half and came back, which is funny.
Yeah, he had 15 touchdown passes and then 5 interceptions. And on the ground, he had 700 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. So did have a career high in rushing. But he also did something that, I talked about his rookie year having 250 passing yards per game. Well, he didn't do this his rookie year. He had the lowest interception rate in the NFL. But honestly, Daniel Jones had been taking care of the ball a lot for a lot longer time than people had realized. Essentially, I went back and looked at it, Justin. After that 2020 Monday Night Football Tampa game, that was just a disaster class from Daniel Jones. His interception rate has been 1.3% from between that game and then through 2021. So not even counting last year, which would have been third best this past season. So the interception stuff had kind of went away since the second half of his 2020 season.
Right, but I would say him even not turning the ball over, let's just look at last year. Him not turning the ball over and keeping the offense on schedule because the Giants' offense, and we'll talk about this too, they were last in total explosive pass plays. They were dead last 32nd, which again, if you were to tell me at the beginning of last year that the Giants' offense would be dead last in explosive pass plays, I think they were 31st in 2021. So the fact that they were 32nd in 2022, you tell me that they won 9 games and they won a playoff game, I'd say you're on crack. We love crack on this podcast. But him not throwing interceptions and keeping the offense on schedule because they were not explosive was one of the biggest W's of the 2022 season and the 2022 offense.
Yeah, he operated what they put on his plate near flawlessly after the first 2 games of the year. But let's just operate after that because that's who the quarterback of the Giants is now, is that player. After those first 2 games of the season, he operated what they put on his plate, like I said, damn near flawlessly. But with that was, like you mentioned, he had the second lowest 20-plus yard attempts in the NFL. Out of 40 quarterbacks, he was 39th. Only Matt Ryan was lower, and his arm was totally shot. And it wasn't just by like a little bit. The difference between him and 38th is the difference between 38th and 17th. Was 40th out of 40 in average depth of target at 6.4 yards. But the reason why I don't go too crazy on that is he wasn't passing up a bunch of deep shots. Now, you go back and watch film, they're here and there. But just like deep 20-plus yard air shots, they didn't pass up a ton. There's a couple. There's one in Seattle that comes to my mind. I'm trying to think of if there's any other one, outside of those first 2 games of the season. But is there any that I'm missing? But what he did pass up on, Justin, and this is where we need to see improvement, is those hole shots on the sideline.
Yes.
He passed those up, almost like consistently passed those up. And we don't know what he's being taught, but you want to take those shots, and those are something that he has to do to take the next step as a quarterback. Like, I don't think there's these big steps that he needs to take as a quarterback. I think it's taking those shots and looking for some of those tight window throws more often.
Yeah, for sure. And, when you take those whole shot throws, you're becoming more explosive. That's a priority that Mike Kafka, as Brian Dable, that they've all talked, Joe Shane, they've all talked about it all offseason. And that's why they've added the speed that they have and the players that they have. I've read this stat before on this podcast. I will read it again, and I feel like I've been talking about this for 3 years, but it's the most important thing in football right now. Record of teams based on where they finish in explosive pass play rankings in game-neutral situations. If you were a top 10 team, you had a winning percentage of 67.2%. If you were in the middle 12, you had a winning percentage of 47.55%. If you were in the bottom 10, you had a winning percentage of 35.4%. The Giants, I believe, were the only team that made the playoffs last year that weren't in the top 7 most explosive pass offenses in the National Football League. And I think that's per Warren Sharp, and he put that out today.
Let's talk about that and the way they ran this offense. Because like I said, he operated what they did flawlessly. I would watch film of the games 2-3 times. You would see 1 or 2 mistakes in a game. And the mistakes weren't like, oh my God, he threw it into the hands of a defender. It's like he passed up on something he should have hit. And his adjusted completion percentage when you account for drops was 81%. Guess what? That's first in the NFL. So he was putting the ball in the right spots, on a damn near perfect level. But like you said, they didn't produce the explosives. Now, there's a couple factors into that. One could be just, hey, Daniel Jones, they don't he's a conservative quarterback, but there's other things into that. They didn't have the receivers to just go out there and win, right? Because if you're playing man coverage, you can just go out there and win and create explosive plays without great protection. But when you don't, you kind of need protection up front because what you got to do is you got to put defenders in conflict and then you got to protect against sacks. Well, guess what? They did not protect Daniel Jones because of Evan Neal and Glowinski and Feliciano and, left guard when Bredesen wasn't out there. Daniel Jones had the second highest pressure in the rush rate in the NFL at 42%. There was 32 QBs with 100 or more dropbacks at pressure. Daniel Jones would have the second highest percentage of that.
Is that from PFF?
Yes.
Okay.
He also had the third highest completion percentage in that at 55.6%. He had the lowest interception rate by almost double than the next guy. But he also wasn't this guy who was creating pressure either. Right? There's quarterbacks like Justin Fields last year who created pressure along with the bad offensive line in front of him. Because he was great. He was really good at avoiding sacks. He was 12th best in pressure to sack percentage, despite being sacked the 5th most in the NFL. He was sacked the 5th most in the NFL, yet he was 12th best in pressure to sack percentage in the NFL. There's 10 QBs that were sacked more than 35 times. Only Herbert was better at avoiding the pressure than him. Only him. So not only was he able to deliver the ball accurately at the top of the league under pressure while dealing with the most pressure, he didn't make the mistakes that other quarterbacks made, and he also avoided the sacks better than all the quarterbacks except for Justin Herbert. He has become a lot better at manipulating the pocket, and now that they gave him an offense that is operable, that works like Brian Dable and Mike Kafka compared to Jason Garrett, it really showed up. And I think the thing that they added, though, that helped with that the most, Justin, was more push for him to be a scrambler, which we did not see for the first 3 years of his career, really.
Yeah, 100%. I think the schematics unlocked Daniel Jones, and you saw a career high in on target percentage, and this is according to Pro Football Reference, 81% on target percentage, which is about 5% higher than his previous career best in 2021. The bad throw percentage went down about 5 to 6%, down to 12.2, where previously he was floating around somewhere around 18% throughout 2019 to 2021. And allowing him to run and having his legs as a weapon. And what's the most efficient play in football? You've heard me ask this question before. What is the most efficient play in the game of football?
QB scramble attempt.
When a QB drops back to pass, and then he decides to tuck it, and he's going to run, and he's going to scramble. Because, you'll have guys running all over the field, and you're not accounting, and on a pass play, you're not thinking of a quarterback that is going to do that. And the fact that Daniel Jones can do that, and when he gets to his top speed, he's so fast, it just it unlocks, it does change the offense. And Brian Dable said, "You're good at this, I'm going to allow you to do it," which I feel like not even Shermer really fully allowed him to do it and okay, go and do it. And a lot of fans were saying, well, I don't want Daniel Jones running. I kind of feel like it's a necessary evil because he's just that good at it, and it's so necessary to do in the NFL. I said it during the Saquon Barkley PPP, but there was no QB running back combo that combined for more 10-plus yard runs than Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones had the 12th most runs of 10-plus yards in the NFL with 27. That changes your offense. A 10-plus yard play is a 10-plus yard play. Doesn't really matter how it comes.
Yeah, I mean, they were the second highest rushing combo in the NFL after Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, I believe. But yeah, he averaged so he had career highs in rushing, obviously, but 27 yards per game came on scrambles, which was twice the amount per year than the Jason Garrett years and 8 more yards per game than the Shermer years. And he scrambled two more times per game, but he also scrambled to throw too, which we didn't see a ton before in his career. So it's not just rushing; he scrambled to throw, and that you saw that happen in the red zone a lot more, and where Isaiah Hodgins and Reggie James were able to get some of their touchdowns.
Let's see more triple options.
Yeah, scrambling to throw, and then also, scrambling to run, which he did a lot more. Where, again, I said he had a lot more rushing yards per game. It wasn't from more of the option runs, the design runs. He averaged 17 more yards per game. That comes from the scrambling than he did the year before. That's essentially where all the rushing increase comes from, is the scrambling, not the design stuff. Because if there's one thing that Judge and Garrett figured out a few games in the 2020 was the design rushing stuff for DJ.
For sure. Where do you want to go? Because there's some first and second down stuff, and unlocking Daniel Jones on early downs and throwing more on early downs should be a goal that we have this year, and I have stats to back that up. Do you want to talk about something, or do you want to? Where do you want to go?
Because I want to get into his project. I want to do the talk about Manscaped before we talk about what happens this season with him, with the new weapon. So why don't you talk to us about first and second down stuff?
All right, sure. So I'll talk to you about first and second down stuff. Because we said on yesterday's PPP with Saquon Barkley that Saquon Barkley's 2023 should not be based on volume. It should be based on efficiency. And what do we mean by that? If he's going to be getting the ball less, then Daniel Jones is going to be getting the ball more. And I want Daniel Jones throwing the ball more on first and second down. When the Giants kind of committed, I'm putting committed in quotes, when they committed to throwing the ball on first and second down a little more than they did in the first half of the season, I would say it's weeks 13 to 17. So here's Daniel Jones weeks 13 to 17 first and second down performance. And you could be saying to yourself, well, Daniel Jones needs Saquon Barkley, and without the running game, Daniel Jones is crap. And I think this stretch on first and second down weeks 13 to 17 proves you wrong. Daniel Jones.
Playoffs, too.
And the playoffs. Daniel Jones weeks 13 to 17, first and second down performance. He was 4th in EPA per play. He was 1st in CPOE. He was 4th in quarterback rating, 1st in completion percentage, 7th in yards per attempt, and oh yeah, doing all that while 25th last in average air yards per attempt. When Brian Daboll let Daniel Jones operate a drop-back offense on early downs, Daniel Jones produced. And also, little tad bit nugget.
And that's not including the playoff game where he cooked either.
It does not include the playoff game. And a little tad bit of a nugget. His first down numbers are okay, Daniel Jones. But his second down numbers are incredible. He was first in the NFL in EPA and CPUE composite all last year on second down. Second down, he had a completion percentage of 74.5, 1,300 of his yards, 10 of his 15 passing touchdowns, 62 first downs, more than any other down, and had yards per attempt 8.1. There was no other down where he averaged more than 6.4. 30 first downs on second down, where third down he had 15 first downs, first down 8, fourth down 4. So I don't know what it was, Bobby. We were even trying to think even like a little bit before the show. I don't know what it was on second down where Daniel Jones just became literally the most efficient QB on second down out of the entire NFL. I don't know what happened, but it happened last year.
Yeah, and overall, I think he was 12th in EPA per game last year for quarterbacks.
Yeah,
or
overall.
per play, not per game, per play.
EPA, CPOE, composite, he was 12th.
And it showed, right? That's kind of where he was at in the NFL last year, but he also stepped up, he got a lot better towards the end of the season. Why don't you talk to us about Manscaped, and then we can talk about this season with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, let's do it.
Is there anything? What else do you have on notes and stuff? Because I talked about the pressure, the scrambling, average depth of target, taking the hole shots and stuff like that. But now we can. Is there anything else you wanted to really hit on?
Yeah, I guess another schematic thing where we complained for years and years with Garrett that nobody was ever open, and the numbers back that up with the aggressiveness percentage. This is a stat on Next Gen. It was 18% in 2021, 17.6% in 2020. That was near the bottom of the league. This past year, even with some receivers that weren't great, 13.8% aggressiveness rate, which was certainly in the bottom echelon of you want that number to be less, because then that means that you're not throwing into tight windows and your receivers are open. You're throwing to open receivers, which is what we've always wanted for Daniel Jones, because things have always been so difficult for him.
Let's talk about a line that we had towards the end of the season on a mailbag. And some people took it the wrong way, but I think the majority of people understood it. Where we said, we don't think Daniel Jones has improved greatly. But he was always like this kind of quarterback, but he had the worst coaching in the league. And Justin, getting ready for this and doing my notes for this, it really brought back my hate for Jason Garrett on how much he held back this dude. How much he held back this dude. Because everything is like a smile. Everything, it's like 2019, cool, besides the turnovers. And then it dips. And then it comes back up once Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka. He just had better coaching around him. Now, he did get better in areas, like we talked about. I think the main thing that they made him better at was more of an improviser, which was scrambling to run, which he added almost, twice the amount per game than he did with Garrett. And then also scrambling to throw, especially down in the red zone. I think that helped, and that's why they were one of the best red zone offenses in the NFL.
Yes.
So, using his legs outside of the design stuff. So that's where I think this coaching staff got the most, really improved the most out of him, was pushing him, improvise, man. Not everything has to be, perfectly like we drew it up on the, drew it up on the board. When it is, cool. But when it's not, don't be afraid to go and improvise. And that's why we saw him be so amazing in that Vikings game, despite the fact that his right tackle was getting his ass kicked on a down in, down out basis.
It's the NFL, bro. You see the best quarterbacks. Every primetime game that you watch, that's fun on Sunday Night Football where there's primetime QB matchups. It's these QBs that are improvising, and I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is going to be running back there like Rodgers and Mahomes and Lamar Jackson do, but it's part of the game, and you got to be able to do it somewhat. And this coaching staff let Daniel Jones do it last year, and hopefully he can continue to get better at it with better weapons.
So let's talk about Manscaped, and then we'll talk about the areas of film he needs to get better at, and then we'll talk about the additions and what we expect.
Speaking of better weapons, boy, do I have something to talk to you about. It's Manscaped. Today's PPP, the final PPP, is brought to you by Manscaped.
Thank you so much, Manscaped, for bringing us all the PPPs, bringing us to all the training camp practices. We're on to the season, and Manscaped will be there with us because they're the best. But a sincere thank you to Manscaped. I just used it in the shower getting ready for this Daniel Jones PPP. Like, I actually thought about it, too. I was like, yeah, this is a celebration of the end of PPP season. And Daniel Jones is back for another one, and he's going to be back for another one next year. It's a question at the end of this player profile. Like, is this Daniel Jones last year? We don't. He's back.
And so is Manscaped. They're going to be back. I know it. I know it in my heart. If you didn't already know, Manscaped now sells beard products. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming changed the game with their Beard Hedger Pro Kit. They're now going a step further with the Handyman, which is right here in the box. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to use it on my face after I'm done reading this ad read. An electric face shaver for a quick and convenient way to achieve a clean-shaven look. And if you're like me, you know clean shaving is a hassle. The Handyman is the perfect compact tool I could take with me on the go to achieve that clean-shaven look without all of the effort. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code GIANTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use promo code GIANTS. Hit the refresh button with Manscaped. Bobby Skinner, you'll be glad you did. And thank you to Manscaped from the bottom of my heart.
You will be glad you did. Thank you so much, Manscaped. We love you. Where does Daniel Jones need to get better just on film? We talked about those hole shots, and I know it's like you're picking at this one thing. But if he doesn't take those, they're not going to put more on the menu for him. You have to take those when they are there. You have to take those when they are there. And also now that you have Jalen Hyatt, you got to let that thing go. You got to just know. You just got to trust that I'm going to let this thing go. Because honestly, Daniel Jones has really good arm talent, but he doesn't have the elite arm talent of the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, and I don't see him ever getting on that level, and that's fine. But Jalen Hyatt, Justin, is the first player in 4 years where Daniel Jones not having that elite arm talent gives me like those guys would probably get a little more out of Hyatt, which means for Daniel Jones, you got to be able to, you got to just pull the trigger on those types of throws. You got to put them on ropes. You got to put those in the holes on the sideline. You got to let go of that ball earlier. You got to wait. You can't wait for him to stack a corner. Yeah. You kind of just got to throw it to him. So it's taking those hole shots that are there. But if you don't take those, they're not going to put the other stuff on the menu for you. They're not going to specifically put in the game plan. So now that you have this Jalen Hyatt piece, you got to go and fix the stuff you did last year, and we've seen him do it in camp a little bit too, which is encouraging. We've seen him have a great training camp, but also when they do put more on the menu for him, because they're going to. If Evan Neal's improved, and this, the addition of Darren Waller, Hyatt, and the other receivers, it's improved. That when they put the stuff that wasn't on the playbook last year back on, you got to hit the shit. You just have to.
Yeah.
Because if we, like you mentioned. You can't duplicate what you did last year every year of your career, or you won't go very far. No, and this even includes the middle of the field too. I feel does hole shot for especially I'm asking this because maybe genuinely I don't know, and I'm sure there's some people listening to this that are wondering for themselves. Hole shot is defined kind of by the sideline, like you're kind of throwing between like levels of defenders. Yeah, when you have a high-low read, like two man game on the sideline, and they have like a safety deep, and then a corner clouding playing the flat type of thing. So it's like you run a flat in a corner, and the corner should be there, but the safety's trying to close in on it. I'm even thinking the middle of the field too, with some of these 20-plus yard completions, because Jones was 31st. And 20-plus air yard completions, with only 1 of 25 being completed in the middle of the field, as classified by like the NFL. The NFL classifies like outside,
outside left, outside right, and then middle. They don't get super specific with all their stuff. But
Hyatt and Waller should be interesting to that, because middle of the field is like, that's be a dude for a receiver area of the field.
Yeah, which,
because most teams have that, especially teams playing the Giants last year because they were so run heavy, they kept the middle of the field closed. Like they didn't face a ton of middle field open stuff like a lot of teams did because of their heavy rush attack and only having one wide receiver that you had to respect deep in Darius Slayton.
But if Daniel Jones's spray charts do not get more diverse from a depth standpoint and then also a target standpoint in terms of where he's targeting on the football field, if that doesn't get more diverse, then teams like the Eagles, like we saw, now I'm acknowledging the playoff game, teams like the Eagles in the divisional round are going to figure out your offense. They're going to figure out what you're doing on early downs. They're going to figure out the quick passing game. You need to integrate and you need to get diverse on where you throw and where you target around the field. So defenses need to account for more things happening. Right?
Agreed 100%. Let's talk about the new additions and how they fall into place for Daniel Jones. Justin, if Darren Waller stays healthy, I think it's really going to change the perception around the league on Daniel Jones. I really do. We've never gotten to see him with something like this. And we've seen it in camp, Justin. We saw it for one drive in the preseason. I really do think him finally having a guy who's just better than everyone else. He's never had that in the receiving game. I truly think it's going to take his game to another level. Even if Evan Neal doesn't improve, which I think Evan Neal will improve, where Evan Neal makes it like really good. And then if you keep Waller healthy, Justin, he has that star. I think the wide receiver room is fun enough and balanced enough to where you have the Hyatt and Slayton speed. The Hyatt speed is crazy. You have Paris Campbell, who's an upgrade over Richie James. We'll see what Wandale's back. You kind of have a chain mover in Cole Beasley. Shep, we'll see you get out of him. Hodgins is, the reliable route runner who's going to separate in the quick game versus man coverage and get open in the red zone. I feel like you have enough pieces with this coaching staff. My expectation for Daniel Jones, if Darren Waller stays healthy, is no debating, like where I'm not going to, me, I don't get into these like, oh, is Daniel Jones top 10 or 11th or 12th? Because I'm like, he hasn't firmly put himself in there. So I'm not going to sit here and try and split hairs. But at the end of the year, I want to be saying, and I expect to be saying, he's top 10. Like without just not even having to argue about it, just being like, no, he's top 10. And I don't feel the need to greatly defend it because his play does it and it's obvious.
And in 2024, there's a $45 million cap hit. I know the cap's going to go up, does every year, but that's a big cap hit. His cap hit this year is $21.75 million. It's 9.5% of the cap. $45 million is 17.6% of the cap. We've seen the Giants in contracts that they don't like, they're willing to sit at numbers that are uncomfortable, a la Leonard Williams, a la Dory Jackson. Those guys are on the last years of their deals, and maybe you would think that the team would extend them and try and push money back. If Daniel Jones has a year that we're hoping that he has, maybe that $45 million number is brought down, and maybe it's pushed back to some years, and I'm hoping at the end of this, we're saying, let's go. Daniel Jones, you're in blue for a long time. Get you here even in your 30s. Let's get the team more help. Push money down the road. This is what all the NFL teams are doing, just pushing money down the road. Let's not live with that $45 million cap hit next year. Let's feel comfortable enough with Daniel Jones as a quarterback that we can push that money back, and he's the guy.
Absolutely. And I expect it out of him. I really do.
Let's win some games.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, if this guy, like, no, the people who are healthy right now are healthy right now. And if they stay that way for the majority of the season, I truly do believe this, that he's going to be comfortably in the top 10.
He needs to stay healthy, too.
Yes, true. He had an outlier year last year of staying healthy. And even got banged up in the Bears game and played the next week later. So we said it last year, Justin. This is the end of player profile season. I remember after the end of the 2019 one, being 2021, like, don't be a dick. Like, this guy's good. Have some trust and faith in him. Do not be, nitpicky. And then after that year, it was like a lot of just breaking down to who he was a player. And then after that, it was like, this is probably it. But now we are talking about like years and years and years ahead, and I hope he's here for a long time. I hope we never have to change Daniel Jones being the player profile until we're sad and emotional that he's gone type of stuff.
And we're old.
Yes, old and washed up talking Giants.
Yep.
So, Justin, any last words before we end player profile season? Thank you to the listeners.
I was going to thank people. Really, this summer and our camp coverage and our PPPs, we've hit milestones that I didn't think Bobby and I really envisioned. And this entire offseason, we've hit milestones that we really didn't entirely vision. I don't do like projections like some people in the company do, but like they've, because of this offseason and because of all of you, I do know this, that people that do make projections at John Boy Media have changed what they are expecting out of Talking Giants this year. And it's because of everybody that listens and because of everybody that rides and dies with us. And it's all because of you.
The listeners.
The family. So thank you so much. This has been such a fun summer. I'm so ready for Dallas week 1. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking kill them. Let's win some games.
We appreciate you guys. We'll see you tomorrow for 53-man roster, Boogie Bash, and reaction, all that stuff. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.